Welcome to episode 50 of Upshift, No Direction Network podcast that gives you an edge on Essence 20. I'm Ryan Costello, one of the designers of the Essence 20 system and an author on the G.I. Joe Transformers My Little Pony role-playing game, core rulebooks, and more from Renegade Game Studios.
And I'm Charles Cushman, and I'm on a journey to dig through the Essence 20 system and find all little details that I might have otherwise missed if I hadn't had a chance to ask the questions that I'm asking.
Before we begin, although I have worked for Renegade on Essence 20, Upshift is not associated with or produced by Renegade Game Studios. This is not an official Essence 20 podcast, and all opinions shared herein are our own. So, Charles, this may be our 50th episode, but that doesn't mean there's no room to grow. I've changed my introduction slightly. It's punchier now, and I don't go into the details of just how many words or how many projects I've worked on. It's just the core rulebooks and more.
I think we all know the number now, but more importantly, every single time you have nailed are our own.
Yes, that's probably where I put the most emphasis in the entire episode to make sure that I get those three, every syllable in the right order.
You've nailed it every time. I'm just like it's now become kind of I'm waiting for it to go wrong even once. Has not gone wrong even once.
Well, I was going to say thank you for noticing, but then you were like, I'm waiting for it to go wrong. Surely this is the time that you mess up.
All right. Well, it's the 50th episode.
Sort of.
Kind of, well, ish. But this is generally a time where you kind of take stock of things and look at what you did in order to get here. You want to talk about some of the experiences that you had? Just
sure.
Go through the list.
I guess I'll start by talking about why I say it's sort of the 50th episode, because it clearly says Upshift 50, but I forgot that the first three episodes had no numbers attached to them. And so I only started counting them when Jason Keeley came on. So it's technically the 54th episode. And I didn't realize that when I reached out to you and be like, hey, we've got an idea for the next episode, but it's the 50th. We should do some kind of reflection celebration episode, which I still think, it's always fun. And it's still better to do it on the episode numbered 50 than episode 47, which is technically 50 or 46. So yeah, we just know in our hearts it's the right number.
I feel like Jason came on, that was like the BC period where everything before that was like prehistory.
BK, before Keeley.
Yeah, before Keeley. So those 4 episodes, BK, those don't really count to the whole number.
But it's actually funny why the first 3 episodes didn't have numbers on them. It is because for like a couple of weeks, Apple said that they are not going to list any podcast with numbers in the titles of episodes. And I don't know the motivation. Nobody knew the motivation. Just everyone pointed out, like, everyone numbers their episodes. What are you doing? And I don't know if it was because it would mean you couldn't, like, randomly generate a podcast. Like, we're talking about 2022. So AI generated podcasts were not really on anyone's radar, except maybe somebody at Apple, or somebody who didn't understand podcasts, was given the keys to Apple's podcast platform and made a mistake immediately. But in any case, that's why episode 0 is episode 0, which is technically, we have a tradition of recording an episode 0 for podcasts, but we usually actually record them way later. And it's like, okay, now that we've got so much back catalog, it could be cumbersome for somebody to listen to everything. Here's episode 0. It tells you what we're about, and then you can just go from there. This is the first time that we actually started with an episode 0. And before that episode started, me and Param we were the co-hosts of No Direction. We had been co-hosting that podcast together for over 10 years. And around the time that I started getting my Essence 20 gigs, and I was like measuring out what time I had, I was like, I don't have time for No Direction, but like the network, yes, the podcast, no. But I asked Param, if you are on board, I would love to bring you over to a podcast about Essence 20, and we'll just do the same thing we do on No Direction, but it'll be about Essence 20, and it'll be a little different because I'll have an insider view instead of being a couple of fans of the system. Not that I'm not a fan of the system, but yeah, in any case, like I wanted to bring Param's rapport, and Param knew Power Rangers better than not better than I know G.I. Joe, but better than I know Transformers. And so it would have been like, okay, those are the 3 first settings. All 3 of them are covered between the 2 hosts. Great, let's go. And I guess the one last thing I should point out before episode 0 launched was the name Upshift because, and I should have double checked this. I don't believe the word Upshift appears in the Power Rangers or G.I. Joe rulebooks. It doesn't ever
Oh,
say, here's this up arrow pronounced Upshift. I think it's just, I was calling it that internally. And I don't even know if all the designers were on the same page about that. But there was a very good chance that when the first episode launched, by then the fandom had already decided their own term for what the up arrow would be called, and I would have just had this weird legacy name for the podcast that, yeah, just I thought would be the word going forward. But future rulebooks, like I'm pretty sure by Transformers and My Little Pony, we were saying up one, pronounced upshift, but it could have easily just been called a plus one, an up arrow. So yeah, I am glad that we didn't end up with this just weird obscure reference in the title. I'm okay with obscure references, but for titles, I kind of wanted that one to be a strong, like, as soon as you hear that, you think Essence 20.
it started out with an episode zero and an AMA when I think take me back to 2022, I think it was. What was happening then?
Well, 2022 was still thick of the pandemic, and we had been working on Essence 20. I think it started around January of the year before. Maybe it was a little later than that. No, it must have been earlier than that, in fact. So, in any case, we'd been working on it for over a year. It had been at the printers for several months, and it was supposed to debut at Gen Con 2021, but supply chain issues, all the stuff, the pandemic stuff. In fact, I'm not even sure if there was a Gen Con 2021. Not in person anyway. It was probably just a virtual con. So, yeah, so plans got changed, things got moved around, and, while everyone in society was dealing with a lot of stuff, here I was just like really hoping that this G.I. Joe role playing game, when it finally gets its turn for release, that it hits, it finds its audience, and everyone loves it. Here's the problem. The Power Rangers core rulebook came out before the G.I. Joe rulebook, and I have been hard on it because I do think that that was not ready for print. And the other person, or another person who thought that was Param. And I think Param lost a lot of enthusiasm for Essence 20 as soon as he read the Power Rangers core rulebook and just, it was not what it needed to be. And I've been talking about this a lot lately because we just relaunched No Direction. But if you don't love the thing you're podcasting about, you're never going to keep with it. Like is not enough, or just being there for your friend is not enough. It's like you really have to be fully invested into this. And he no longer was. And so episode zero was supposed to be the part of like a three-pronged launch of our Essence 20 content. It was going to be like once a month we would watch some media tied to one of the settings. We would do like a watch along with the fans, release the commentary, and we were talking about doing an actual play on the network. All of which, yeah, unfortunately fell apart, and Param left the network shortly thereafter. We're all a little worse for it. Param and I had a great partnership, and I loved podcasting with him. But I'm not going to force him to do something that he does not want to do. So that's why the Param era isn't even 3 episodes. It's episode zero. I don't remember. What is the one after episode zero? Oh, it was a Renegade Con 2022 preview. And then by episode 3, I was solo casting. I did an AMA. So in those 3 episodes, a lot of time passed. Normally, or now, Upshift is on pretty regular, every 2-week schedule. But by then, because already plans were changing, we did it monthly, which I don't even think was the plan at the time. But yeah, so March 31st, by then the G.I. Joe role-playing game had come out, so I did an AMA where people were asking me questions about the core rulebook. And honestly, I don't even remember the questions. I don't have them written down because I was taking them live on Discord. So I would have to re-listen to that episode. I'm sure it was fine. I'm sure it was fun. I actually do remember, as far as solo cast go, which I am not always good at, that one was smooth. It was a good, like, it felt like the audience was a member of the podcast. I was repeating the questions, so if you were listening and not reading along, you could follow it. So yeah, it was a pretty good AMA solo cast. But then time passed. And that was the end of the Param era. Do you have, before we move on, anything you want to know about the Param era?
Honestly, I hadn't had a lot of experience with No Direction before. until after the Paramera. So I don't really know much about that other than a couple of stray podcasts I've listened to and went, oh, that's that voice. Okay. But I do recognize that that was an enormous part of No Direction for a very long time. But I guess moving into I guess the modern era of Upshift, how did you hook up with Jason and somehow convince him to do a podcast with you?
So Jason and I have been friends for years. He was in Adventurous, which was our Pathfinder actual play. He was not one of the original cast members, but then after my friend Ari left, and we were like, we've kind of got a void here. So Crystal reached out to Jason. They were co-workers at the time at Paizo, and he came on and became a regular cast member there. And like he and I were friendly before that, but we became friends after that. And then he left Paizo and joined Renegade. And around that time, that's when he reached out to me with the idea that, now that we're both working on Essence 20, what if he took over as a co-host and we revived Upshift, which by that point had not released an episode in 4 or 5 months. So yeah, it was something. I get these projects that are just constantly on my mind, and then I will look and like, oh, years have passed, and yet to me it's still a current project because it's some part of my brain is still focused on it. So, he mentioned Upshift, and I was like, great, I want to do more Upshift. This is the big thing that I am working on right now, and I would love to regularly promote it. And the opportunity to have one of the authors and designer of the system and a developer, like that covers a lot of behind the scenes ground. And so it could lead to a lot of interesting conversations, and unlike any other podcast I've ever been involved in, because, I've never had a podcast of this scope completely dedicated to something that I was this involved in. So yeah, and Jason and I have a great rapport. Again, friends before this, but it's different when you're one-on-one in a podcast. So it also happened to work out that he and I were good friends talking about, the creative process. And I knew more about these brands than he did, but that gave him an opportunity to be the guy asking me questions about what was going on. So yeah, we're looking at Upshift. Episode 1 is called Reintroduction, with re-upload technically is in the title, because if I upload a podcast and I don't click what podcast it's part of, it just becomes uncategorized and never gets to the feed. But I can't just then go back in and re-click it, because that screws the whole thing up. So I've got to create a whole new post with the new upload to it. With the proper thing clicked so that it gets uploaded properly to the RSS feed, and I put the re-upload to let people know who were looking for the podcast, wondering why it wasn't in the RSS feed, that now they can expect it.
That was some hardcore meta background information there.
That's what this episode's all about.
Yeah, anyone out there wondering, I might want to do a podcast myself. Remember, you can just hit one button, and then you didn't. I
still do it. I think the last Upshift that I uploaded, I messed up. So yeah, I've been doing this over 15 years. It's pretty much the same back-end structure, still making rookie mistakes.
You quickly moved on with Jason into a lot of the stuff I find really super interesting, which was settings and RPG worlds and things like that. I remember 2 and 3 were really around being able to make things work in slightly different or considerably different environments. Talk to me a bit about those two and kind of your memories of that.
Yeah, episode 2 is adapting settings to RPGs. An episode I remember fondly, and so I'm surprised it's so long ago, because we are still in 2022 back here. But yeah, it was less something that I knew going into this and more something that I observed as I started making, adapting the RPG, is that toys make great RPGs because toys are designed for open-ended play. And so, and you definitely see the difference between G.I. Joe and to a lesser extent Transformers. Transformers is kind of the middle ground, but between G.I. Joe and Power Rangers is the show first, so the media. G.I. Joe is toys first, and then stuff adapting the toys. And so the toys are built so that the kid gets to the playground, and now the story begins. Like, you contextualize who the character is or what the toy they're holding is, but the adventure begins once the kid starts playing with it. And role-playing is just another form of play. And so G.I. Joe has a lot more flexibility there, whereas Power Rangers, because it's based on the stories that were being told, and like actors were swapping out and storylines were concluding. And so it was harder to adapt, because now you have to say either this is a point in time in this canonical timeline, or this is its own non-canonical timeline, and here is how you play in it. And then the setting your setting was the next episode. And it was basically saying that we had to make a call of where and how we present these settings, these brands, based on the licenses we had and whatnot. But you as the GMs, you as the gamers, get to decide what the parameters of your game are. And so I really enjoyed the banner that I made for this one, because it's a grid of 9 pictures, and every one is a different interpretation of one of the brands. So it's got Deke era G.I. Joe, it's got Transformers animated era Transformers, it's got an episode of Power Rangers where they go to the Old West. And so some of them are brighter and more cartoony, some of them are more gritty, like the one in the middle is from the not Days of Future Past. What is the G.I. Joe episode where they find their own dead bodies?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was called.
It's bugging me that I can't remember it.
It's everyone remembers that particular two-parter though. That was definitely a very big Worlds something.
Yes, Worlds Without End.
Worlds Without End.
Yeah, and so I've got a screen cap of when Grunt comes across Steelers and his own skulls, their skeletal bodies, and so just saying you get to decide the parameters of your game. And this is stuff we couldn't include in the core rulebook, but here's how to expand it into other interpretations of these settings.
Awesome. And you did get to manage to use the Deke picture of the Joes meeting the Queen, which,
Yes, of course. I believe the Queen had just died.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's that went dark real quick.
Yeah, so the G.I. Joe ones, it's Deke where the Joes meet the Queen. It's got Big Ben is front and center in that episode. The Worlds Without End episode, so definitely the darkest episode of the Sunbow series. And then G.I. Joe Extreme. Oh, no, actually, that's Sergeant Savage. Sorry, that's Sergeant Savage, not his Howling Commandos. He's Screaming Eagles.
The true darkest part of the...
Whereas Power Rangers, I went live action comics and movie, the recent live action reboot. And Transformers, I went animated. And then I went Hearts of Steel, I believe it's called. It's the Steam Monkey one, where they rise up in the Steam Age, and then the Transformers with My Little Pony Transformers crossover. So again, these are all the settings that we've got books on, but very different interpretations of them.
I'm going to jump to 4 because it was really interesting. This was the rules as written discussion, and that was that one's very interesting. As a GM myself, I will often take liberties.
Sure.
For instance, right now, my current absolute I will never do is the 5th edition D&D counterspell rules. I will absolutely never, ever accept that as being canon and will reject that till the day I die. But while it didn't get kind of that heated within 04, there was a lot of discussion about what to change and how to change it and so on and so forth. So talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, this was an episode that kind of was like, I am glad we've got Jason on now. I'm glad that we have a developer, because up until then we had project managers and we had the designers, and we had no, the Kevin Feige of the project. We had no one person that was making creative and business and managerial calls. And so once Jason came on board and familiarized himself with how the rules work, then he figured out how to make these things a little more in line with one another. Because again, we all started with the same system and then made our choices based on what the settings needed. And it ended up kind of splintering things in ways that there were some redundant rules across the different rule books. And it would have been to Essence 20's benefit if Jason or somebody in that position had been there right from the beginning to smooth things out and make sure that as much as possible, everything was on the same page. And so I was just kind of going through some of the examples of here's some rules inconsistencies. Here's some I'm responsible for. Because as often as possible, I try and be the bad guy in examples. I'm also the good guy, but I try not to make anyone else the bad guy. And so there were the big one was Transformers, where it says rollout, which is the Autobot faction perk, that it lets you convert to your alt mode. And my intention for that was it just lets you convert for free when you roll initiative, so that you don't have to be nitpicky about what mode you were in before combat. So like, yeah, you were driving on the highway, you can assume that you were in, a car mode, but there are some times where it won't be as obvious. And so just being able to skip using an action to change your alt mode saved everyone the discussion. But it shouldn't have said alt mode. It should have just said you're able to convert. And so that's the conversation of like, was that my fault? Even though it's not as intended, it is how as I wrote it. Did somebody else edit it for a lot of reasons? So yeah, that was just the kind of thing that it just a real inside baseball type of conversation when it comes to designers.
And I think that was really one of the things that when I was started listening to it, that was one of the things I'm like, okay, that's something cool. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for understanding the depth of a gaming system is to do that. And I mean, there's 1,000 people doing that for D&D. So, but maybe not as connected or as aware of the system. But there are a lot of people who will go into that level of depth. So it was really interesting to hear that for Essence 20.
Well, especially like as the designer, I can say, "Oh, I'm not sure what I intended here," or "This is what I intended, and I wrote something completely different." Whereas if it's just fans reading it, and like I was that guy on the Pathfinder side of things, so I'm not throwing shade at anyone who does it this way as a fan, but you don't have the insight to know for sure what was going on there. And I was kind of giving people permission to, make the call that's the most logical. Don't be too precious about the rules, because obviously I'm not.
As far as the products go, I think Upshift 5 was a breakdown of Operation Cold Iron. There'd be a lot of breakdown episodes to follow. Talk to me about this first one that you did where you took a product and kind of started taking it apart and figuring out the details of it.
Yeah, it is kind of weird that this is the first breakdown because it's an adventure. And so breaking it down means spoiling it. And I did like, this is kind of my first step towards the project managing side of it, because when the adventure writers were just told, like, get together and make an adventure of this scope with these levels and given no theme, no like restrictions, but also no guidelines. And so I was the one like, here's my idea. And everyone else was like, okay, cool, we've got an idea. And it's like, oh, all right, I was expecting a debate. I was expecting somebody else to come with an idea. So I took a minor and unofficial leadery role in that regard. But otherwise, I co-wrote the mechanics for Justin's part of it. So were these 4 parts? Yeah, there were 4 parts. So part 4, and then, part 3. And then I wrote all of part 4. But yeah, I had no insight other than just some conversations with Ben and Paige about how 1 and 2 were written. So again, weird that this is the one we started with, because the other books we could just talk about every single anecdote and I would have much more fingers in like probably every single section. This one, very much not.
And it was definitely a product of the move fast and break things kind of era of Renegade. So it's
That was probably peak move fast and break things, honestly. The adventure books, like we had to make up everything. We had to make up the adventure terminology. Like we had some of it because every core book had an adventure in it, but this was a much larger scope.
the next one, and I got to admit, this one I skipped.
Oh,
No, it's terrible to admit that, but the Upshift 6 was TTRPG Art and Art Orders. I don't even know what this one's about. What is this one
what
about?
do you think it's about? Art and art orders. So one of the advantages of having a license is that you get a whole swath, like a whole catalog of on-brand images from the licensor. But it also means that whenever we want to do original art, now there's multiple steps for it, and it puts us in the interesting situation where we've got enough Duke, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, Cobra Commander pieces of art. We don't really have to commission new ones. And so when I'm given an art budget, and I actually don't think I was doing many art orders. No, okay. Sorry, I was mixing up my timeline because Cold Iron was out, but by then I had worked on Field Guide, and Field Guide I did a bunch of the art orders. So yeah, so by then I had done some art orders. And yeah, what was fun is that I had the freedom and even kind of the obligation to take the more obscure stuff and get the original art for that because we didn't have it in the catalog. And so I got to indulge in some deep cuts. But also there were just challenges for each individual ones because Power Rangers is based on real people. And so when you're creating art of that, there's different rules for that. And also just people don't have an art first picture of these characters in their head. And so you've got to make sure how you translate them to the page fits into how most people will perceive them. My Little Pony was the easiest because we could honestly just use one of the many My Little Pony art generators out there and say, here's what this character looks like. Here's the things that just make a little bit different so that it's not so cookie cutter. But yeah, like that one was really easy. And Transformers was the most frustrating because for two reasons. One, because the TF Wiki is impenetrable if you are not a fan, which means that when we send an artist to be like, draw this character, and they'll be like, I'll look up this character to get an idea of who they are. Why is this so weird? Why can't I get straight answers to my questions? It's because TF Wiki is it's performative art as a wiki. But also, the Transformers is the guiltiest of just reassigning names in different generations. And we have at least one piece where a totally wrong character with the same name as the character that was supposed to be in the art is used. And like Jacob Blackman had pointed it out online, and he's like, I volunteer to do the art orders with you to make sure you get the right characters in there. Because, yeah, I can understand how if you're not in the know, the artists were making these mistakes, but the audience is in the know, and those mistakes are unacceptable.
Um,
So,
uh, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, that's just so this is like the further evolution of me doing project management start because I'm within the know for G.I. Joe, and so I was able to make the right calls of characters that make sense to be in there, characters that we like. If we don't want just a bunch of white guys, and there's a lot of white guys in G.I. Joe, but G.I. Joe is also a very diverse brand, and it's very easy to have a scene full of not a single white guy, and people wouldn't notice because every single one of them is an A, B, or C list character. And so I know that if we've got certain diversity needs, I know exactly how to get the right characters in there. And if nobody notices, that's the ideal situation.
Hmm. Yeah, and it is wonderful that you can have something that people are going to connect with. Like it is, RPGs are appeal to everyone, and so they should look like everyone. But I'm going to jump forward because we've got a lot of these to go.
Yes.
Plotting story arcs, Upshift 007. That is it was a good one. It was based on Andor, and so as a good model for what those pieces are. Any quick things that you want to talk to about plotting story arcs? This was actually a very good one. I highly recommend that people listen to
Yeah,
it.
I'm
If you,
kind of surprised we didn't do more because this is just like good jamming advice through an Essence 20 lens. And I'm surprised Jason and I didn't do this because both of us are experienced GMs, both of us are experienced adventure writers. So this is probably something I should have tapped him, his talents more for.
And it's sort of well, anyway, it's one of those things that hit along when there weren't a lot of DM resources available for Essence 20, and so this was one of the better ones. Was simply just listening to you guys talk about it. The Upshift 008 Memories. I think I missed that one too.
Super skippable. So every now and then it's just an indulgence of the brands. We don't do any real like game mechanics or anything. And so this was just talking about some of our fond memories of G.I. Joe, Transformers, Power Rangers, My Little Pony. I
We
can say like this is my childhood photo from one Christmas morning. I'm the one in the mask pajamas playing with a Thundercat. So none of what I'm representing has any Essence 20 products out. My brother, at least, Darren, has Rodimus Prime there. And then my younger brother has a Pound Puppy. And my older brother doesn't have anything. So I don't know what he got that Christmas. But obviously nothing he was so proud of that he wanted in the picture.
we got sad. So jumping forward to Essence 20, what is that? And options for first-time players. Talk to me about that.
Yep, so we just thought that these are new systems that are out there. Actually, we were getting a lot of questions on the Discord that I was like, oh, wow, I guess as somebody who knows the system very well, some of these are more basic questions than I was expecting, like more baseline, I should say, questions than I was expecting. So we just did a couple of episodes, one about like, if you want to get your friends to play Essence 20, here's all the selling points. And the second one is, if you are new to Essence 20, here's how you make a character, here's how you make just different decisions.
Yeah, there's a lot more resources to be able to support that now than there were, but the things that do rely on all of that additional information, like the ND and secondary, resources, things like that, didn't really exist. So I think this was probably a good choice to make and put that out there. So we're going to talk about maybe in general, and we'll skip over the next ones, but Renegade cons.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your experiences with covering Renegade cons.
Things have been shrinking. So that's kind of the main thing I think of when I think of Renegade Con. Renegade Con 2021 was all Essence 20, and me and Brian and Elisa were all over that and just talking about, like, here's the stuff that's coming, here's why we're super excited. And then Renegade Con in 2022 was like, now we've got the core rulebooks out there, but guess what? Here's a bunch of other things. 2023, we announced the Sergeant Slaughter's book. That's why the banner that I made for it is a Sergeant Slaughter action figure looking at the Renegade Con, the My Little Pony Heavy Renegade Con ad on laptop. But yeah, as Renegade Cons have been approaching, what the? I just noticed that it says Renegade Con Recap. Should be recap. Anyway, yeah. The more like at this point, we're not going to do Renegade Con coverage. Like, we've got another one coming up. I forgot to put it in the plugs in the show notes, but my plug was just going to be like, you know what the deal is right now. If you are an Essence 20 player, do not get excited. We are just not the ones that get the marquee time or really any real time at this point on the on Renegade Con anymore. If you want to stay informed about what's coming for Essence 20, talk to us. We're the ones that are doing the majority of the Essence 20 coverage at this point.
So 13 was Just Wait, Recap, and Other News, which told me nothing about it, and I don't remember this. All I know is that the banter was, my dad's doing okay, which immediately put me into like what's
Yeah,
going on here?
my dad was going through some heart stuff, but just wait. So Renegade Con was in February, and then there was a one-off also seminar a month later called Just Wait. And so I guess there was just some stuff that probably for licensee reasons they didn't have finalized for Renegade Con, but didn't want to wait until Gen Con. And so a month later, they did just the one-time thing talking about some really big news. And so it was big enough news that we could make a whole episode out of it. But yeah, in general, we could just skip over all of the Renegade Con recaps going forward.
Okay, popping forward then to Essence 20 on Foundry. Now, this is something that I didn't know until I read this. So Essence 20 being put on a virtual tabletop.
Yes, so Essence 20 has actually had officially licensed tabletops, but like one of them was Roll20, and people were pretty disappointed that did not go nearly as deep as they were expecting it to. And there's another one that is more recent, and I don't know the status of it. I just know it was announced. Meanwhile, Foundry has a very active fandom that has just been custom making modules so that you can play Essence 20 on it. And they are some of the like system masters. They like really know how everything works. And every now and then they'll ping me and be like, here's how we are programming this option. Does that line up with how you expect that to run in the game? And so, yeah, they take Essence 20 really seriously. And the modules are free. And we've got this episode. So Foundry is the tabletop, the virtual tabletop for people who really want to get the most of their virtual tabletop. And so it's the Linux of tabletops. It's the ones that the programmers tend towards. And so this whole episode was the step-by-step of like, if you want to do this, great. You will have a great experience once you know what you're doing. So this episode helped people figure out what they were doing.
Yeah, it's very much like programming your own video game in my experience, which of course I just don't have the patience to do. So I use other tools for my virtual tabletops, but it's interesting that that product was available on there. So the next one was 16, which was the first of the Developing Essence 20
You're
episodes.
passing over Just Chillin', which was when we were supposed to record an episode and then Montreal was hit by an ice storm. And so I just had another chat episode with Jason.
Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, I did skip over that. There wasn't a
There's nothing really to talk about.
um,
All right, so yes, Developing Essence 20. This is kind of a follow-up to that Rules as Written versus Rules as Intended episode, where just like me turning the microphone on Jason saying like, what exactly is a developer? Because I've worked with developers for multiple different systems and different companies, and it doesn't feel like there's a one-size-fits-all definition of that term within gaming, and it has a very different terms in video games. And so we went over his definition of a developer, and then also what he does specifically for Essence 20. So yeah, it's again an inside baseball type episode, which I love both producing and listening to. So hopefully, people that are here for more than just knowing how the game runs, but like how the mechanics function, that's a good episode for you.
Yeah, and it was very crunchy, but it was very helpful to me to understand kind of what those processes are and kind of get an idea of what from a professional lens that development looks like. I'm going to jump to episode 17, languages.
Yeah,
Um,
this one I expected more out of. In fact, this one I outlined twice by accident because I think this was supposed to be the Just Chillin' episode, and then it got delayed, and then we did developing, and then I was like, oh, we should talk about languages, and so I wrote a new outline, and then I was like, this is all familiar, and then I scrolled down a little bit, and it's like, oh yes, I already did this exact same outline twice. I thought this would be a more fun episode. Like as a English Montrealer, language has had a major impact on me, and yet I'm not the person that was pushing for a lot of complex language rules in Essence 20. So yeah, I just have an interesting relationship with languages, and I thought it would translate into a cool episode. But no, I think this ended up just being too much minutia about too dull of a topic.
well, lesson learned. So let's move to the absolute opposite of that.
Yeah.
Ship 18, designing and developing Sergeant Slaughter. Now, I know that you are perhaps um, where the intersection between G.I. Joe and Sergeant Slaughter fits. You are truly, that is where your fandom shines. So I can only imagine the glow on your face as you wrote down the piece for this to know that you're going to be able to talk about developing this pack and the joy that you had actually developing it.
Yes, this was one of my favorite experiences working on an Essence 20 project. It was a combination of by then I really knew the system, and so I managed to get it to go further than I was expecting it to, but also the challenge of making something that had almost as many pages as Cobra Codex, which was entirely about the main bad guys of the setting, but doing it focused around a single character. And so I was the one that like solved the puzzle of how do we make a whole product about a single character with all of these like the pawns and the minis and stuff like that was going to be in there, but like what would be the Essence 20 content? And so I came up with the adventure. I came up with how we would theme new options around Sergeant Slaughter, but not so close around Sergeant Slaughter that we couldn't use them broadly as just like the good new options. And the hope was that it would just, people who were looking for more G.I. Joe options would gravitate towards the Sergeant Slaughter box set because, yeah, there was a lot of cool stuff in there. I don't think it was an especially popular seller, which is really unfortunate because it was something that I think there was a lot of high hopes around. And it's one of those times where it's like, I don't have any mulligans on this one. Okay, I don't care for the covers to the books, but like, yeah, had I been the person doing the art orders, this book would be slightly different. But for the most part, like, this is as good as this product's going to be. And I guess just there wasn't an audience for it.
Well, I think that where it came down to for that product was that it required nostalgia for one specific person that not everybody loved,
Mm,
at least not as much as you, that went through a lot of kind of reputational beatings as their character went on through its main franchise, which was WWE or F or whatever it was at that time. So not everyone has that same level of nostalgia. But what I liked about the product was that there's an enormous amount of joy in it.
mm.
There's whimsy in it. And there's like I can tell that the editors were off your back for this
Yes,
because so much of it had that level of joy that comes from somebody who is a super inside fan of this thing. And so I got the jokes, and I could tell that you didn't have to fight to include them. So that's what makes it a good product for me. But that being said, not everyone loves Sergeant Slaughter, and he was kind of the franchise there. So jump up to let's go to the next three are about crossovers, and that was
yes,
the era of the field guide to action and adventure that changed everything. And
yes.
so there are three episodes that covered that. Talk to me about what that time was and why you were definitely putting a lot of energy into promoting field guide to action and adventure.
Sure. Well, first, I'm just going to give a shout out to the episode 19 banner where I used Ryu from a Power Rangers toy line, a G.I. Joe toy line, and a Transformers toy line. And so Ryu was my just the my token crossover character who is not actually covered in any of them. I just thought it was novel that this was a character that's been in all three of these different brands. So yeah, the Field Guide to Action and Adventure was the product that fulfilled the promise that Essence 20 was cross compatible, and it also unified a lot of those like things that we were talking about how Essence 20 started here and then veered in a couple of different directions. G.I. Joe and Transformers being pretty close together because I was brought on to do a lot of the Transformers stuff, and so I just kind of modeled it after a lot of what I did for G.I. Joe. But that almost made it worse because now Power Rangers was the outlier, whereas G.I. Joe and Transformers had a lot more cross compatibility. But in any case, Field Guide to Action and Adventure was just such a fun, unique product to work on. And it kind of was like everything that we talk about on the podcast put in book form. And there was an adventure in there, and there's stuff about how to cross over, and there's the GMing advice. And it's really, this is only occurring to me now, but it's basically, if you want Upshift the book, it's the Field Guide to Action and Adventure. And the reason we ended up with 3 episodes out of it is because even though it's not one of the biggest books for the Essence 20 line, it is probably the most content-dense book. And so we had the breakdown, but before we did the breakdown, we just got all of the crossover stuff out of the way. And then doing the breakdown, we were like, we are running out of time. We can't even touch on the adventure. And the Free RPG Day Cobra Confusion had just come out. And so we had these 2 adventures that were crossover adventures, so we decided to make another episode about that.
And that's something that still interests me to this day. I think we have another one on the books, or we've talked about another one on the books about going back to that and looking at how to continue to move that forward. But Field Guide to Action and Adventure is, as far as I was reading it, was really the most technical of all the guides.
Yes.
All the rules text that probably should have fit into everywhere else if you were willing to get rid of all of the wonderful flavor that brought half the audience to it. And which you couldn't get rid of in a product like this. There had to be a certain amount of nostalgia and cool things to read, and it couldn't just be a PDF of rules text. I'm not saying that this one was, you managed to fit some really good stuff into it, but it was rules text that kind of I felt was missing elsewhere. So I can absolutely see why it needed to be promoted, because it may not be Field Guide to Action Adventure is not the sexiest name in the world, but it is. It's indispensable.
I like the title. And so it was pitched as the Action and Adventure Field Guide, and then it got reversed when it went to development. That's really one of the only major changes that went to it. And I talk about it in the episode, but it was kind of funny because when we were trying to break the product and figure out, like, what is this? How are we outlining it? What is our theme, our approach? It was when I came up with the title Action and Adventure Field Guide that people were like, okay, yes, yeah, okay, I see what you're doing. It's very thematic, but it's also very educational.
I liked what you originally said first for it. Just a little clunky.
The idea was that maybe if this does well, which unfortunately did not, heartbreakingly did not, honestly, then it could be Field Guide to blank could become a brand or like a subset.
I see. All right, yeah. I get it. But no, I think that the tools that were identified in it and would continue to use it will continue to be built into every other book. Like you don't come back from having something like this. It was the thing that sort of brought it all together. I'm going to jump then we're going to skip the 23 because that was a Gen Con one, but we're going to jump to, sorry, that was 22. Wait, they're both.
No, that was 23 episode. Oh, wait a second.
There are
oh my goodness.
23s.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. I thought that I just missed 22 entirely and everything was off. No, okay. So Gen Con 2023 should be episode 22. Episode 23 is the threat design, which I guess is really a continuation of the coverage of the Field Guide to Action and Adventure, but Jason wasn't available, and so I just talked to myself walking through making one of these Cobra Imperial Guards. It was a character that I never expect would show up in any of the books, so I felt comfortable saying, like, what is this thing and how do I adapt it? And I think I ended up coming up with a cool performance-based threat that was that showed the versatility of the threat creation rules and showed what, like, concept first threat creation can do.
And this one actually I've listened to recently. because I'm putting together threats for a little kind of divergence special mission within our main campaign. Eric's going to let me take the reins for a little while, and creating threats is something that I need to be able to do, and that might be something that we're coming back to a little bit in the future because I have to create a magical threat, and I have no idea how to do that.
I got you covered.
I figured you would. 24 was Renegade Con Virtual Month of Darkness.
Yeah, yeah. Another Renegade Con. We can skip over it.
I skipped it to listen to, but the name was interesting enough.
Oh, it's
And
because the what's it? The vampire and werewolf. What's the world? World of
oh,
Darkness. World of Darkness. So that was the heaviest part of that content.
God, shit. And then we jump to 25, which is one of the better ones. Honestly, it is. They're all pretty good, but this one was very good. And I've listened to it twice. It's episode 25, which was the breakdown of Cobra Codex.
Yeah. So this was good because Cobra Codex had such a bumpy, complicated road. Like Sergeant Slaughter and the Field Guide were so smooth compared to Cobra Codex. And so, yeah, it makes a good episode because there was a lot to talk about.
I jump to the next one, 26. This is actually my favorite episode, believe it or
I
not.
am happy to hear that because I love the stuff I did about puzzles in the Field Guide to Action and Adventure.
Mhm. And this particular one, all the pieces to it, it is one I believe I've listened to like three times because it was a lot of really good information for GMs about designing threats that are not people or things that can't shoot you or bite you. It's kind of trying to make the rest of things interesting, and that's something that I've traditionally, as a GM, struggled with is to trying to find good puzzles that don't absolutely frustrate people or take, 3.5 hours to solve a something which should be solvable by grade five. So it was very interesting to me to be able to go through that. I'm going to go to another breakdown episode, which is 27, the Ferocious Fighters breakdown.
Yes. So this is a solo cast, and I was rambling. There's still a lot of good, fun anecdotes, but if you want slightly unhinged Ryan, this is a good example of it.
Yeah, it's not my favorite Unhinged Ryan episode, but we will get to that one.
Mm.
But yes, there was a lot in there, and it was you. Uh, so 28, it's a banter new year.
Yep.
This one was sort of a non-Essence 21. It was about a lot of interesting media content, but I don't remember it, to be honest. For a
Well,
while.
everything in the banner is the stuff we talked about. So if you ever remember me talking about alligators or the Marvels, that's a good summary of some of that stuff in that episode.
Okay. Well, then we're going to jump to, there was a Toy Talk episode, which was a nice holiday episode of all the good gifts and interesting things. Um,
Well, and I had just gotten the classified his tank, so like toys were on my mind.
well, yeah, how can it not? The darn thing was huge.
Hmm. Oh, it's so
Um,
impressive. We got
so,
another Renegade Con.
yeah, we'll skip that one up. Decepticon Directive Breakdown.
Yes, turned the tables because I had nothing to do with this book. And so I got to talk to Jason about his experience just getting the manuscript and doing his job on it. And so we got to talk about it like it was almost a review from my point of view and then anecdotes from his point of view.
And it was a very different episode because it felt like development at Renegade had changed. And maybe that's
Yes.
the way that he had described it, but it felt like a very like the Wild West had been tamed
Yes.
and things were going in a very different direction. That's what I took from it, at least.
Yeah, Jason brought a lot of structure to the development process, and then Ben took over from Jason. Like by then, Jason had left Renegade, this was one of his last episodes, and he just wanted to cover a book that he did a development on, and had a lot of things to say about. But yeah, he brought a lot more stability to development, and then Ben inherited what he had done and continued on with the way Jason was doing things.
So here's the sad one.
Yep.
Episode 32, Farewell to Jason. This one, like because I binged all these at once, I was literally sad during this one.
Aw.
Like it really felt like, oh wow, oh it's not like it was dying or anything, but it really did have that end of an era feel to it.
Yep. He and I
Um,
had been podcasting for 2 years at that point. That's a good run.
and it was sad, and that he wasn't working on the product anymore it was also sad. So yeah, that was a sad one. It wasn't the most sad one, but it was the sad one.
Well, we marked the occasion by taking the episode, or sorry, the banner from his introduction episode, making it sepia tone and putting it up there.
Okay, might have been a little heavy-handed, but there we are. This one was a news roundup. We're
Yeah.
going to do 23. And
Duke in the
go
Rain.
to the saddest episode of all time and of all upshifts was you trapped in a car in low
Oh,
tunes.
you would not believe the rain that day, Charles. Like it was flooding the highways and things were getting cut off, and I was just driving, and the my GPS was saying, "Oh yeah, you're like 20 minutes from your daughter's daycare." And it's like, really? Because I've been 20 minutes from the daycare for an hour now, GPS. What are you doing to me? When am I getting out of this weather? When am I getting to my children? And so I just was like, I've got all this time to kill. And for whatever reason, oh, I think because Energon Universe had just come out, and I was conflicted because I liked Duke in it, and that made me question if it was an authentic representation of Duke. So yeah, I just set my phone to record and just started talking to myself about Duke while occasionally giving weather up and traffic updates.
And the other piece, which I don't know if you noticed, was the wipers in the background sound like a heartbeat.
Oh, I
So
know
it's
that they were there.
absolute kind of macabre, strange weirdness that, from the general Upshift is uplifting. I mean, it is generally it's a hype podcast. It's a hype and an information podcast. A lot of these things are very positive. This one was like, oh, this is the dark period. And this was actually the one where after I listened to it, I reached out to you and said, maybe you need a co-host.
Maybe you're right.
Maybe
So I
you
also want to point out the release dates because Jason left April 19th. The news roundup was May 23rd. Then the Duke in the Rain was July 18th. So it had been months since the last episode of Upshift. And it was probably weighing on me that I hadn't done anything with Upshift. And so when I was given an opportunity to record something and a topic in mind, I was like, I got to do this.
Well, so you moved past that, and my little crossover was 35.
Yeah, so 35 and 37 pair to each other because one of them is talking about My Little Pony and how you can use its options in your game. And then 37 was spellcasting specifically because something happened in the edit of 35 and I lost a chunk of it and I didn't realize until later. And most of that chunk was spellcasting. And so I was like, I got to revisit that and just do a whole episode dedicated spellcasting. But I just felt like, oh, am I repeating anecdotes or are these the anecdotes that were cut? And so I wasn't happy with either of those episodes, unfortunately.
So I have listened to them more than once because in my quest to start trying to like the pony book, which I eventually, you won that one.
Yes.
But it was clear to try and get a better understanding of spellcasting because spellcasting it's not just about spells. It's also about a whole mechanic of stress and upshifts and downshifts to mechanically represent that, which goes beyond spellcasting.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting tool set to use. So I have listened to that. Politics is Plot 38. This was an interesting one.
Oh, I was
Um,
so mad.
Talk to me
Yeah, no
about
sugarcoating it. Trump had just won the election again, and I think that is still one of history's stupidest decisions. And so I ranted about it. I am perfectly fine losing anyone that does not want to listen to me bash Trump because I'm okay with fewer numbers but being my authentic self. And then, like 20 minutes into this half hour episode, I try and salvage it by being like, and here's how you can actually use politics in your Essence 20 game as a GM. And I got into the subject. And so, like, it gets cheerful by the end of the episode.
it was I did not listen to it to the end, I will admit.
Okay.
It seemed like a pretty hard turn for the podcast, but no, everyone was mad. The entire country was mad. Well, no, those people who weren't mad were in complete disbelief. So, how could anyone inflict that kind of gunshot wound on themselves? But it was interesting. I think the next one was a super interesting one. I've listened to this
Yes.
once just because. Like I said, super fan Jim Sorensen. I'm kind of a fan of Jim. Like, dude knows everything. And that was, I love listening to people who are absolute masters of their area of knowledge. And that's really what that felt like. What was it like working with Jim?
It was super fun. So it was one of those episodes where before we started recording, we were having this great conversation. I was like, all right, let me start recording. And then we probably have a 20-minute conversation before we start the episode that I still have recorded somewhere. I was like, this is also good. This is not the content. Like, I still prefer a tight topic for an episode, but like Jim and I really hit it off. We were just chatting about all the stuff that we know. Like, he really knows Transformers. I really know G.I. Joe. He knows RPGs, but I know Essence 20 very specifically. And so, like, there was a little bit of like some learning tree stuff in that I was telling him some of the things that I've learned in the, like, at this point, 3 years that I've been working on Essence 20. And he was dying to hear more because I think he really enjoyed the experience of working on Techno Organic Secrets and was looking forward to more opportunities to work on Transformers RPG books.
Yeah, and definitely brought a lot to the table with that. Like he's Transformers Wiki, but understandable.
Yes. I'm pretty sure he contributes to the Transformers Wiki. And there's stuff on the Transformers Wiki about him, just to point out how he's just one of those influential people in the fandom.
So we'll get to Upshift number 40.
Hey, I know him.
Hey. After having listened to Duke in the Rain, I reached out and said, maybe you need to not be screaming into the void. Maybe you need someone to talk to. Not because, like, from a depression point of view, but from an interview point of view, you definitely needed to have somebody on the other side of the table to ask the questions. And so we got together and we figured, we'll hang out. We'll do maybe 15 minutes on establishing who history is, and then we'll talk
Yeah.
about the rest of the stuff. Yeah. No, we sat down and talked for 2 hours, and it was spectacular. I love it. I've listened to it myself. I don't like listening to myself, but this
Yeah.
one I really do enjoy I enjoyed both catching up, but also really kind of understanding what our relationship was with these toys. So yeah, I hope that the audience forgives me for my first thing being this 2 hour kind of.
It was kind of like, well, this bodes well because it means that we can easily fill up our time with whatever topic we're talking about. But it also is a warning that we have to have a tight topic so that it doesn't fill up 2 hours every time.
And that you saying that 3 minutes after we were supposed to be finished.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. You said hard out.
I'm gonna take the hit for that one.
Okay.
But it is 41 was another history of Essence 20. This one was very different than the other one. The other one was pretty inside baseball, but me not really having any of that background.
Right. That's why I felt like it was a good time to do that topic because one, it could be something that people out there are curious about. And there was some stuff that if you were there from the beginning, you still didn't know it from my point of view. But also that, like, for you to fill that chair properly, here's all the information you need.
And I learned quite a bit, and it was very interesting. It definitely made me go back and listen to some of the previous ones. 42, on the other hand, My Little Pony.
Yep.
I think this was the one where you completely won me over on it. It was really the understanding how conflicts, and it's not just that. It was one of those things where I was changing my understanding of what Essence 20 actually was.
Mhm.
My original thought on Essence 20 was that this was a product that was there to another product based on the toys. It was not cashing in on nostalgia, but it was definitely leaning into that nostalgia. And then you could play it, you could shoot at each other just like any other combat RPG. Looking at how conflicts are done and how much of Essence 20 can do from the pony books and everything else, all the other types of conflict that you can have, all the other things which can prevent the person from getting to what it is that they want to do, which is the basis of all storytelling, that aren't violence. And that was something that was really just very, very mind opening for me. And I've really that was I guess that was the realization that made Essence 20 a favored RPG. Not just because you wrote it, because I would love it if because you wrote it, but when it comes down to it, you've tackled the things that a lot of RPGs will not in a way that makes them fun and mechanically interesting. And so that was what that one did. Next one was a Renegade Con. The next one was Transformers One, which I actually had to like. I don't know why, but I had to like, Ryan, we have to do Transformers One. You're like, oh yeah, it was just a book. It was. I'm like, no,
No, no,
you wanted the products. You did this.
I really enjoyed this book and this movie and working on this book, and so I'm not too sure why you needed to like put it in front of my face and to get it on my radar that this is definitely a breakdown episode we should do. And it had been a long time since our last breakdown, and since Upshift's last breakdown. It was our first breakdown. Yeah, no, this was obviously an episode we needed to do, and I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, and so I did since then see Transformers One.
Oh, good. How'd you like it?
Pretty good.
Wow, all right.
I was like, I don't know how I'm going to say this, but yeah, it was pretty good. I thought it was well written. It was interesting.
And
Um,
life changing, right? Like that's the other word you would use to describe it?
it was pretty good.
Okay.
And it was, let's say it's one of my favorite things that they've released in the last many
Well,
years.
there we go. Okay.
When I wasn't on, but I thought was very interesting is Welcome to Night Vale.
Yep.
And that was Carlos. And how was Carlos to interview and work with?
Carlos is fun. So Carlos and I know each other through just shared online space. It just feels like, I have a lot of friends that could be like Carlos, but he and I happen to interact a lot. Like Facebook has decided you two are algorithmically aligned, and so we will show you each other's content constantly, which just makes you feel like you know this person more than you otherwise might. And so, yeah, just getting into it, it was like talking like old friends about this product that I knew a decent amount about because I've listened to about 50 episodes after the RPG was announced. But having not worked on it at all, it was cool to get like insight into an Essence 20 RPG product that I didn't know anything about. So yeah, no, it was just fun educational episode for me as well.
46, this doesn't feel that long ago. Huck's
Yep,
Personal Files. Um,
one of the best.
it is, learn from the best. But it is definitely, I think we were kind of getting into our swing there. And the one I really, really enjoyed, Story Points, which is 47. That one really felt very much like we were exploring something that neither of us completely understood all the detail of. And we're figuring out new things about it. And that really did, it taught me a lot about just this. Again, all of the resources in the game are there, but some of them are used more and some of them are used less. And it's the ones that are used less that have the greatest amount of space to play with.
Well, story
And
points is so specific because it's so broad. Like everyone has access to story points, but you kind of take them for granted because of it.
One of the a new character that I put together for the game, which has not been released yet, is based entirely on using help actions and story points in order to be able to make everybody else around them ridiculously, incredibly, stupidly powerful. The story point mechanic actually really did make a huge difference. Really, that was what kind of helped form that character was the discussion that we had around that. And it's my favorite, what do you call it? My favorite title by far.
Oh, well, that was your title.
Oh, well,
There we
then
go.
that's why, because I'm really, really good at that thing. I don't know. But then Behind Essential Builds, again, fantastic episode from my perspective. Was really got into the guts of it, but also taught me a lot about the tools that I should be using in order to be able to make new characters. It just made making new characters significantly easier from that point on. So
So
If
I'm glad you enjoyed this one because when I was editing it, I was like, oh, the words are just falling out of my mouth, and I didn't know how coherently I was like, I wasn't doing the step by step, I think, as logistically as I should have. But if you liked it, and some people online have said they liked this episode, so maybe it's just me.
well, it also covered spies tools and some of the
Yes.
other pieces that you really need to look at in order to be able to do this in a way that's not flipping through six PDFs at the same time. And that's, or maybe flipping through six PDFs at the same time, but searching for the right things in those PDFs. And that was a game changer for me, and I hope it was. If you are starting out with it, I would recommend listening to that. Definitely listening to that one. And then the Learn from the Best challenge, a challenge I put out and then immediately failed.
I'm sorry, we just didn't have a saw viper contact.
So get on that. And then we can retroactively go back because there is no reason whatsoever that you should not be able to have, what was it, but like a sledgehammer.
Yep, but like a sledgehammer.
Or yeah, that's or no, but like a jackhammer, something like that.
No,
Anyway,
sledgehammer, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, fantastic name for a perk, and so yeah, got to have a character that has that. So hopefully, that will eventually happen. But I hopefully will do some more challenge stuff like that because I think it's a really good intellectual exercise, and it's really cool to see how you dive into this stuff. Because sometimes it takes looking at this stuff a different way in order to be able to kind of uncover some of the knowledge that you have in there that you don't remember that you know.
Yes. Like
Because
I
you've,
probably
you've
spend more
gotten
time
more.
thinking about Essence 20 than maybe anyone on Earth. I might actually have that accolade. So, yeah, it does take the occasional prompting to remind myself of some of the thoughts I've had about Essence 20. So,
And
yeah, I really enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to future challenges.
yeah, so that takes us up to today. And in the future, where are we going with this? So, looking at potentially future challenges. I really like that format. Hopefully, we can go forward with those. As products are released, we certainly are probably going to be maybe the authoritative source if they don't change Renegade cons for looking at these things. But I don't know, where else do you see us going?
Well, we haven't done a GMing episode in a while, and you've got GMing, like Essence 20 specific GMing stuff coming up, and just I know you have a lot of thoughts on GMing. So we're probably due for a GMing episode, and we so the languages deep dive was too specific, but the story points deep dive was a very good, like, this is the kind of mechanics we can do a full breakdown on, so that's something that we can look at again. I'm always happy to talk about building characters, building adventures, and building products. So all of the above.
Excellent. So we are a little over time, but not ridiculously so. So that's good for us. Um, and do you want to take us out?
I actually have more call to
Oh,
action and more shout outs to talk about than usual. So, how about we end it here because I know you had a hard out like 15 minutes ago, and then I'll just record the shout outs and the call to action.
all
After
right.
it's just kind of going into the fact that No Direction has relaunched, and for whatever reason, the first three comments on the video about the return of the No Direction podcast were, "How does this affect Upshift?" And so I will address that. But I don't want to rush, and I don't want to keep you longer than you have to.
All right. And I look forward to listening to this so I can find out how does it fit that? Are we being
Well,
relaunched?
I'm getting rid of Charles, first of all.
By popular demand, I'm getting rid of it.
No.
Excellent. Well, I am looking forward to that, but I do have to go. And all right. Another good episode, I think.
I think so.
Next one.
Thank you for joining us for episode 50 of Upshift. Before we go, a couple of things I want to bring to your attention. First of all, and this is going to sound verbose, but like there's no way of explaining this otherwise. Transformers 1 and Welcome to Night Vale are now fully available. What does that mean? Considering we did our episode on Transformers 1 months ago, we did our episode on Night Vale months ago. Well, Renegade has this trickle out release schedule where first it goes out to people who pre-order, and then the PDF version goes out to all people, And then eventually the physical product goes out. So we're at that last stage where you can go to a game store and you can buy Welcome to Night Vale or Transformers 1 off the shelf. So if you're interested in physical versions of those products, now you can get them. I also want to address the fact that the No Direction podcast has returned to the No Direction Network. For those who don't know, No Direction is our flagship, as the name implies, and it is a Pathfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. It has been on hiatus for several months now, and I finally returned to it for the first time in years. And we've been regularly releasing once again to YouTube. We've been breaking episodes down into segments. We release the segments one at a time, and then we release a collected version to YouTube and to our podcast feed as a full episode. And so I posted an episode called "And We're Back," which kind of just explained everything I just said and more, that No Direction is back. And the first 3 comments were people asking what does this mean for the future of Upshift? Which, encouraging, because I enjoy doing Upshift. I love Essence 20, and I'm glad that the audience is there, and that apparently I am now as associated with, or more associated with, Upshift as I ever was with No Direction. Okay, maybe not as I ever was, but just people see that I'm doing a different podcast. The Upshift audience is a little bit worried. So I'm not saying that any podcast goes on forever, but there is no end in sight currently for Upshift. Charles and I are having a great time. There's still a lot more content that we could be talking about. And as of now, I've been able to balance not just the return of No Direction, but like an accelerated return of No Direction, because I envisioned an episode being released in August, and then things took a while. And so I've basically been producing segments for both the August and September episode in the last month, and still had time to do this Upshift episode. Likewise, Essential Builds won't be going anywhere. Basically, this is a little bit more added to my schedule, but once I get into the regular schedule where it's just basically 3 15 to 30-minute segments per month, it'll be a lot easier for me to juggle it and Upshift and Essence 20 and Essential Builds, basically all the Essence 20 content. It'll continue to happen on the No Direction Network. And I just want to say thanks to everyone that asked. It's nice to know that Upshift is important to you. And actually, if you could just do me a favor, a little more engagement on the Upshift videos. We don't tend to get too many comments, and I do like to interact with the fans. So if you did enjoy a video, or if you just had any kind of thought, you know how algorithms work, that is a huge boost to our network, and it gives you a chance to talk to me directly, not just wait until you're worried that Upshift might be going away before you engage with me. Like, I get it, there's a bunch of podcasts I don't engage with, and probably would if I heard that they were going away, or that I worried that they were going away. But anyway, do with that request as you will. Either comment more, or just keep engaging with the fandom as you do. One way or another, I appreciate that you care. So until next time, if you want to find out more about us, you can go to nodirectionpodcast.com. You can find other great gaming podcasts, including No Direction, and you can find great blogs, including Essential Builds. There, I said it right this time. You can also support us at patreon.com/nodirection. It helps keep the lights on and helps pay for our service fees. And finally, thank you to Word Burglar for the use of Letters from Snake Eyes Part 4. You can find out more at wordburglar.com. Until next time, on behalf of Charles Cushman, I'm Ryan Costello. This has been Upshift. She knew she couldn't call me, at least until I found out what happened to Tommy.